What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome to Cinemaholic Productions. My name is Spencer Henderson, and I am a cinemaholic.
I'm Ryan Gordon, and I'm a cinemaholic, and I'd like to start off by apologizing. I woke up with a sore throat, so I may sound a little weird today.
We have an awesome show for you guys today. We're going to be talking about Patriots Day in silence, but we're going to be starting with a couple other things. But first, I want to remind everybody, if you want to skip ahead to any point in the review, we have the timestamps down below that you can click on, and as well as links to all of our playlists. So if you have any previous movies you want to go back and check what we thought about, then go ahead and look through our playlist, guys. We got lots of great content for you guys to check out. That being said, speaking of great content, this week we are going to be bringing you our best of 2016 list, as well as starting Sundance Film Festival. So Sundance starts on the 20th, I believe, or is it the 19th?
I think they have some special screenings on the 19th, but the actual festival is on the 20th.
All right. Well, we will be starting our attendance on the 20th. We're going to have a couple reviews for you guys each day of different movies, at least on the weekends. I'll be going up on the weekends. I have school during the weeks, but I will be heading up there each weekend. And me and Ryan have a bunch of movies we're going to be checking out and giving you guys kind of our general, just spoiler-free thoughts on. So that being said, I think that wraps up the announcements, and we're actually going to be doing something new starting this week. We're going to each week be talking about a weekly classic, just giving our brief thoughts on a movie in the past that is well regarded or that somebody suggests to us. And this week it's Singing in the Rain, which stars Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds. And I'm going to read the plot. It says, a silent film production company and cast make a difficult transition to sound. So as I said, this film was actually written, directed, and starring Gene Kelly. And Ryan, what did you think of Singing in the Rain?
I'm a huge fan of this movie. I don't necessarily want to spend too much time on it. It's such a great classic, and I really debated going back and forth with my score on this one. It was so awesome to be able to, when we chose this week's classic, it was just kind of let's do Singing in the Rain. But this week is actually the 60th anniversary for Singing in the Rain, and they're doing a theatrical re-release of that. And it's just kind of perfect timing. I went back and forth with my score between giving it a perfect score. What I ended up settling on was a 9.5, which is daggone close to a perfect score. It's classic, it's beautiful, it's heartwarming, and it's beautiful. Like picture wise, it's so colorful and so awesome. And we're going to talk about Debbie Reynolds a little bit later. This is probably my favorite performance of hers. And I enjoyed rewatching it, and I like this new classic thing that we're doing because it was nice to be able to kind of harken back to that.
I absolutely agree with basically everything you said, down to your score and down to kind of like flip-flopping back between a perfect score and a 9.5. I end up settling on a 9.5 as well. I'm going to start with my pros of this movie. I think it's so fun. It's so charming. It encapsulates really kind of like a great little era of the transition between silent films and sound in movies. And I think it does so in a way that's really, really fun. And, the characters that at the center of the movie with Gene Kelly's character, what was his name? Don Lockwood. And, Lena Lamont, who is played by Jean Hagen, who actually gives a really good performance in this movie, in my opinion. But really, the person who does steal the show to me is Debbie Reynolds. Just because, of all the performances in this movie, I believe that hers really does hold up the most because hers is the most grounded. You have Donald O'Connor, who played Cosmo Brown, who's the pianist, and his performance is really, really cartoonish, which is fun to watch, kind of like as a time capsule type of thing. But if he were to do that today, people would just be like, who is this guy? Like, what is he doing? Because some of his stuff is so cartoony. But that being said, it kind of adds to the charm of the movie. And the sets are great in this movie, just really, really fun. So as Ryan said, I'd also give this a 9.5 out of 10. Not everything about it holds up perfectly, but that kind of adds to the viewing experience. So I love Singing in the Rain. And speaking of Debbie Reynolds, we're going to be moving on and talking about Bright Lights, which is the new HBO documentary. And Ryan's kind of going to set that one up for us. So Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah. So this one kind of, we got the news of it coming out right before we shot last week's episode. And I had no idea that someone was even making this movie, let alone that it was coming out like that night. So the synopsis just on IMDb is, it's fairly simple: an intimate portrait of Hollywood royalty featuring Debbie Reynolds, Todd Fisher, and Carrie Fisher. It's an HBO documentary compiled of old footage and some footage shot, I believe, back in like 2013. And it was all compiled, and it's basically just a giant homage to Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds and their whole family. And it does something really well that I was praying that it would do. It just kind of highlights their characters, who they are, and I think that's what we needed right now. And it really stood out. There was like 15 lines that I kept writing down that Carrie Fisher would randomly say. There's one part where she's walking through her bedroom and she's just like, oh, this is a picture of a young guy. It kind of looks like Shia LaBeouf if he was a Dutch young prostitute. And this is my suitcase. His name's Rod. And it's just so funny. She is such a great person and character, and I really enjoyed this. What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, so this yeah, like you said, was a movie that we had just barely heard about, so we decided to kind of like jump on, and I really wanted to check it out because as a fan of Star Wars, like me and Ryan are both kind of big Star Wars nerds, so I know I had curiosities to watch this. And this movie is really kind of just like a little slice of life of in the summary, it said intimate. And I think intimate is a really good word for this movie because it feels very intimate. It feels like very personal as far as the relationship between these two people, particularly Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher, as you stated. It kind of gets in to the other family members as well, but they really are very much the highlight of this movie. And kind of like you just said, the, idiosyncrasies of Carrie Fisher and how they kind of highlight those, it was really, really cool because she was a very different lady. She did say some very, very different things, but I also liked kind of seeing Debbie Reynolds because after I watched Singing in the Rain, I looked up kind of like her IMDb page, and she didn't really ever explode as an actress, like a Hollywood actress after Singing in the Rain. And this movie kind of highlights that she was really more of a performer than she was an actress. And that's something that I really like. I know I like to see because I thought when I saw Singing in the Rain, man, this was a talented, talented woman. And yeah, she was a performer. She traveled a lot and performed a lot. And I really, the thing I appreciated the most, I guess, about this was I did feel like they really did a good job capturing the genuine bond between Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. And I really wound up enjoying this movie. I'd give this an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's definitely worth your watch, especially if you have access to HBO.
Definitely. I ended up giving it a 9 out of 10. And it is like we've both said, it's just a very heartwarming, touching 90 minutes. And this could have gone really wrong. It could have gone in the wrong direction because I feel like I don't think they were planning on releasing this when they did. I think things kind of happened and they both passed away and they had all this footage. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is kind of what I'm assuming happened was they had all this footage and they decided to chop it together and to make this what it was, which could have gone in a bad direction could have come across as them just capitalizing on it. But I feel like it did work in a way that was an homage. It was, you know, paying tribute to their lives rather than a capitalization. And the reason I didn't give it like a perfect score, that aside, is I felt like it didn't really necessarily have a through line or like a point besides that, which, understanding kind of like those circumstances, you don't really need that. It was really good for what it needed to be.
I think we're ready to move on then, and that means I'm going to get into my watch list. My next movie on my watch list is going to be Neighbors 2, which the first Neighbors was a movie that I actually really enjoyed. I don't know what the general consensus on it was, but I actually really wound up liking it. I thought it had some hilarious like moments in it. And Neighbors 2 actually is better than it has any right to be. That being said, it's not like an amazing comedy. There were some hilarious scenes in this movie. There's one scene involving an RA that was just like, I was like dying laughing at that part. And there's one really, really funny scene involving Zac Efron that just like, I was like laughing so hard the entire time. But that being said, the reason why this movie will not get a huge, huge high score is because it is a complete retread of the first movie. It very much tells the same exact story, just with girls this time, instead of, it's a sorority instead of a fraternity this time around. But there was some pretty cool like social commentary like about how sororities can't actually throw parties in the United States. Like there's a part where Selena Gomez is up in front of like her all the pledges that are gonna come and try to be in the sorority, and she says something along the lines of, fraternities can throw parties but sororities can't. Look it up on Google right now. And it's almost like she's talking to the audience, because then all of the people in the sorority are looking it up on Google. And I went and looked it up on Google like after she said that, because I mean I rented at Redbox. I wasn't in a theater or anything. But I'd give this a 6.5 out of 10. It's a fun movie. It's worth a Redbox rent. If I saw it in theaters, I wouldn't think it was as worth it as I ended up. But I was not expecting to like this one, and it turned out to surprise me. So check it out if you have any interest in that type of a movie. The last movie on my watch list is actually something that me and Ryan both watched, and that's going to be Christine. It stars Rebecca C. Hall, which is an actress that I'm not too familiar with prior to Christine. But Christine tells the story of Christine Chubbuck, a 1970s TV reporter struggling with depression and professional frustrations as she tries to advance her career. Christine is a movie that like emotionally devastated me. I seriously could not watch this movie in one sitting. I had to stop it and come back and finish it because it was almost like too much for me. Guys, the Oscar bait this year is like really, really depressing. All of it. Like we have stuff like Manchester by the Sea and Moonlight and Christine and Silence and A Monster Calls. And it's like, holy cow, show us like a little bit of light here.
La La Land.
Yeah, La La Land, I guess, is the one movie that's like, okay, finally something uplifting. But Christine, my goodness, it is a very detailed look at depression, and it's a character study of this woman. We watch many, many interactions with her that are painful to watch. And Rebecca C. Hall's performance in this movie, in my opinion, should get her an Oscar nomination. It is like devastatingly good. It is a fearless performance. She totally dives into this character, into the character's mannerisms, and that's really the selling point of the movie. So Ryan, go ahead and quickly tell us what you thought of Christine.
I really, really liked it. Rebecca C. Hall, I really enjoy a lot of her performances. She was in The Town, she was in The Gift, The Prestige, and she's had a very good track record. But this, I think, is her crowning achievement. This is such a in-depth character study, and I'm torn on the pacing of the film. I felt like the pacing was very it was tempoed the way it should have been, and it's a very slow progression into the depth of her depression. And I mean, by no means is it a fast cut film, which unfortunately I get why they did that, but that was kind of in the end a turnoff for me. I felt like it did take a lot longer to get there than I would have wished. And I felt like a lot of people will be turned off by this film because they're watching it and going into it anticipating the ending. If you've heard anything about the story of Christine. And so I felt like it kind of took a really long time to get there. It is over 2 hours. I felt like a 90-minute movie would have been exactly what this needed to be. But that aside, I really, really enjoyed the progression that happened. And you can see each thing going off in her brain that turns her to this point, to this extreme. In the end, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. But I agree with you. Her performance is the standout, and I think she should get nominated. I think it would be a shame if she doesn't.
Yeah, quickly, I'll just say I'd give this one an 8.5 out of 10. I think that performance is just so good that really nobody should miss this. It's a really worthwhile experience.
Awesome.
So let's go ahead and get into your watch list, Ryan.
Okay, so I've got a few on here, and I'll try and just cruise through them. It's very unfortunate the way this is going to turn out. My first one is Live by Night, which is the new Ben Affleck movie, written and directed by and starring, Ben Affleck. It's also got Elle Fanning in it, and it's an interesting movie, specifically lately, with Ben Affleck being Batman and stuff. And I can see in a lot of his comments lately the frustration. He spent like a year and a half making this movie, and then he goes into all these junkets for Live by Night, and everyone's always asking, when's Batman coming out? When's Batman coming out? And I read an interview with him the other day where he was just like, F it. I just spent a year and a half on Live by Night. We're at an interview for Live by Night. Ask me about this movie. And I feel like that's what this is going to end up being, unfortunately. His last 3 were amazing films and will go down as some of the greats. And he is arguably one of, if not the best director right now. This dude has talent. Live by Night is not up to par by any means with everything. And I don't know why. It just kind of falls short. And there's several issues that I had with this movie. I would have fired the costumer. Ben Affleck looks like he's wearing a suit that's 3 times too big for him the whole movie. Maybe that was stylistic. Maybe that happened in the 30s, but it felt out of place. Zoe Saldana, I think her name is, the leading lady, she's like wearing contemporary clothes the whole time. It looks like in one scene she's wearing a tank top, and they didn't wear that in the 20s and the 30s. But my biggest beef with this film comes down to Ben Affleck. This is a guy who, when he was like 20-something, won an Oscar for Best Screenplay. In this movie, there's one point where his character literally says legit. This is a movie in the 20s. Nobody says legit in the 20s. And I don't know why Ben Affleck would even put that in his script. So I'm very disappointed with this film. That being said, it is still a good film. It's just not up to par, and it's a little slow, and it's not a Ben Affleck film. So I'm going to give this a 5.5 out of 10, which is very sad to say that a Ben Affleck movie would not even make it to Fresh. Do you have any thoughts on that before I move on?
It's just a shame. Like, Gone Baby Gone is one of my favorite movies of the 2000s so far, and that's Ben Affleck's directorial debut. I was excited for a new Ben Affleck movie, but basically everything I've heard about this has talked me out of being excited, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely red box it. I mean, I would watch it. I would definitely suggest watching it, but wait when you can get it for $1. So sad. And what makes this even sadder is my next film is Why Him? And I'm going to rate it higher than a Ben Affleck movie. And I actually I heard a lot about this, and a lot of my friends had gone and seen this movie, and it looked all right. But you convinced me to go see or to watch Everybody Wants Some the other day, and the girl in that one is the lead in Why Him. She's amazing. She's amazing. It's James Franco playing another character that James Franco would play. But it's actually really funny. It's kind of like a Neighbors 2 scenario for you, where it just ended up being funny, and I laughed a lot more than I thought I would, and it wasn't as generic as I thought it would be. That being said, it is another James Franco movie, but it was surprisingly funny, so I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. 0.5 higher than Ben Affleck's latest movie, but what can you do? I don't know. My last one on my watch list is Elle, which I've been anticipating since last summer when I started seeing trailers for it, and then even more so when what's her name? I'm looking it up right now.
It's like Isabella Huppert or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So she won the Golden Globe. Not that the Golden Globes are worth 2 squirts of piss, but she won the Golden Globe the other day, and I was like, now I really need to see this movie. And I can see why she won the Golden Globe for it, because it's a foreign performance, and the Golden Globes are hosted by the Hollywood Foreign Press. So it makes perfect sense. That being said, she is a front runner for the Oscar. Her performance is outstanding in this movie, and this movie took a lot of balls to make. The movie opens, like the poster opens with a shot of her cat, and literally the opening scene of this movie is her being raped, and that's all I want to go into, because it's such a dramatic and twisted and a thought-provoking film, and it's in French, so the whole thing is in subtitles, and I want to go see it again because I spent more time reading the subtitles and not watching the movie, so I feel like I need to watch it again to ingest all the imagery. But this movie is so good. It's very dark, so forewarning, but I don't want to spoil anything. Just know that her performance is very warranted. I don't think she'll win the Oscar. I still think that Natalie Portman's going to win, but this is something that I'm glad, like I said, I don't care about the Golden Globes, but I'm glad that they brought this up and awarded it, because at least now people are talking about this movie. And I feel like this is definitely a movie that everyone should go see if you can take that kind of stuff. And that kind of wraps up my watch list. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was just going to say, Elle is directed by Paul Verhoeven. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Verhoeven, for those of you who don't know, is like the director of movies like Showgirls and Starship Troopers. So and he actually graduated from Colorado Film School. So pretty crazy stuff. And I believe he also directed Total Recall.
Yep.
With Arnold Schwarzenegger.
The original, yeah.
Yeah, so that sounds like an interesting story, but sounds very dark.
Right, and I went into it, I had seen the trailer, but the trailer honestly doesn't give you much, specifically because it is all subtitled. So I didn't know anything going into it. I didn't know much of the premise, so I don't want to spoil anything, because I definitely want to hear your thoughts on it, but it adds to the experience specifically in this case.
Well, I will be watching this movie this week, so
perfect. Maybe next week we can have a bigger discussion on it then.
Sure. Okay, so let's move into Patriots Day.
On IMDb, it says an account of the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing and the aftermath, which includes the citywide manhunt to find the terrorist responsible. So what were your thoughts on Patriots Day?
It was okay. I mean, it was fine. I didn't love this movie. I've heard some people compare it to Zero Dark 30, which is blasphemy in my opinion. Just because, look, here's the deal. Every moment in this movie when we're dealing with the investigation or the bombing, I was completely in. As far as I was invested. I was engaged by what was going on. The emotional moments in this movie are so clunky, particularly in the first 30 minutes. There's a conversation between two characters regarding a necklace, without giving too much
Ugh.
away, that was just awful. Like when they did that, I was like, oh my goodness, this is not looking like it's going to be well. I just think that the script that they're working with is a little bit too heavy-handed for me. I also kind of take issue with what you brought up as far as the Mark Wahlberg character. I think that for a day, and this is a day that I remember, I was a senior in high school, about a month away from graduation when the Boston Marathon bombings happened. And I remember like pretty vividly the whole entire like buildup of this story. And I remember hearing that they found the guy in the back of a boat and all that. So seeing it on screen was really, really cool, and kind of getting the details of that manhunt was interesting. I just thought that, first of all, for the cast that they had, the people in the roles didn't really have much to do that I felt was extremely great, except for Mark Wahlberg. And he's like the one fake character in the movie. And it's so, I don't know, it just didn't really impress me. And out of a day that probably spawned hundreds, if not thousands, of incredible feats of human heroism, we decide to make a movie and profit off a movie about a fake act of heroism that might not have even happened. I found that to be a little bit, I don't know, maybe it wasn't as good as something that could have examined somebody who actually displayed real acts of heroism on that day. But not that I don't want to discredit and think that make people think this is a horrible movie. I think this movie will, and it does work for lots of people. And I definitely don't think it's horrible. Like I said, I was engaged in all of the moments with the bombing, and I will give this a fresh. I'm just going to say my score real quick. I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. So that being said, Ryan, what did you think of Patriots Day?
I liked it more than you. I'm gonna give it an 8.75, actually, a lot higher than you. I really enjoyed it. Like you said, though, the very first maybe 15 minutes where they tried to set up all of these different stories that they kind of touch on, I didn't like that. I didn't buy into that at all. Specifically the necklace setup, that was rubbish. But like I was saying at the beginning, I would much rather see Peter Berg tackle something like this than Battleship again. Like this, night and day kind of a difference. Battleship was rubbish, and this is, like I was saying, he's finding a groove. Now I want to see him improve and build on. I think I liked Deepwater Horizon better. Score wise, I don't know what I would give it off the top of my head, but I think it was a better movie than Patriots Day. More fulfilling. Patriots Day I really did like, though, and like you were saying, it was very incredible to see this on film, but it does bring up a discussion of how soon is too soon, and is there a too soon with these kinds of movies. It's very touchy, and I feel like it did well because it's not trying to profit off of it. I think this could have gone a very bad direction if it wasn't paying honor, just like, I guess, Bright Lights, like we were talking about. It's all about the intentions behind the movie, and I don't think there were bad intentions making this movie. It was definitely to bring highlight to a devastating day and honor that we were able to come together. And I really loved the poster that they did with the shoelaces and the American colors and stuff like that. I think my favorite part of the movie was actually Melissa Benoist. I don't know how to say her last name. She's the wife to one of the bombers, and she plays Supergirl, and she was in Whiplash. I wish we could have gotten more out of her. I feel like she is a phenomenal actress, and she needs more roles, more meaty roles that can display her acting abilities. So I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't get to see much there, but I'm going to give it an 8.75. That's that.
Okay, so guys, there is a new Martin Scorsese movie that you can literally leave your house right now, drive to a theater and see. So if you haven't, please go do that because he is a living legend. Martin Scorsese is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. I think I've seen all but two of his movies. He's somebody whose filmography I've studied. I've seen several of his movies multiple times. Several of his movies would make my favorite of all time list. And Silence is a passion project by Scorsese. He's been trying to put this movie to screen, I think, for 26 or 27 years. And he actually got the book Silence, which is, I have read, it's written by Shasuko Endo, I believe is how you say his name. And he got the book while he was making the movie The Last Temptation of Christ, which was back in the 80s. So that gives you an idea of how long ago he's been trying to get this movie made. And the plot on IMDb says two priests travel to Japan in an attempt to locate their mentor and propagate Catholicism. This film stars Andrew Garfield, Adam Driver, and Liam Neeson. And Ryan, go ahead and tell us what you thought of Silence.
I had a lot of anticipation going into it for everything that you just said, and I knew that this was, if not your most anticipated of the year, up there for it. And so I was really nervous going into it. I was just praying that it would live up to expectations, and it did. This movie is very, very deliberate in everything that it does. There's very few movies that can tackle a runtime like this. I think it's 2 hours and 45 minutes, around that ballpark, and leave you after. It was like Gone Girl. Gone Girl was one that I could go through that long runtime and want to watch more and go back and see it again. And that's how this movie ended up being for me. Is it ended, and the ending was actually the only moment where I was aware that I had been in a theater for a long amount of time, because I didn't know how it was going to end. And so I was like on the edge of my seat, wondering when it was going to end and if it was going to end the way I wanted it to. And once it was over, I could have sat for another hour. I could have continued watching this. It's so beautiful in its pacing, and it takes everything very subtly and builds upon it layer by layer. The acting, in my opinion, aside from the directing, is the highlight. I came out of the movie and I had told Steven that I haven't studied Scorsese as much as you, so I wondered how many similarities to his other movies you could pull from it, because I couldn't tell it was a Scorsese movie. And I think that's something to say about how great of a director he is that he can take something that's so unlike everything else he's done and still master it. And the acting, like I was saying, is phenomenal. And I think Andrew Garfield should be nominated for this. And then they can tag on Hacksaw Ridge as a pat on the back, because everyone in this was phenomenal. Who's the Japanese guy? Is he called the Inquisitor? The guy that they take him?
The Grand Inquisitor.
The Grand Inquisitor. I think he should be nominated for supporting actor, because he blew me away. I've never even heard of this guy before. I think he was a comedian or something, and the levels and the performance that Scorsese was able to pull out of him was phenomenal. And I mentioned the ending. I think it didn't end the way I wanted it to, but it ended the way it needed to. And it was very, very well executed. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it, because you're such a Scorsese fan, and because, this is such an epic masterpiece of film that is monumental coming out of 2016.
The movie that I thought of, actually, while I was watching this, in the way that, as I said, that this is a objectively good technical movie, is I feel like Silence is 2016's The Revenant. Whereas The Revenant was a movie that I watched and I said, the filmmaking in this movie is top notch. Like, whether or not it connected with me on an emotional level, the filmmaking in that film was top notch. And Silence has top-notch filmmaking, but it also connected to me on an emotional level. So it basically, that means that I love this movie. I think that the story at the center, knowing that it's based in historical fact and that people at a point in time were like this and treated each other like this, is absolutely fascinating to me. As you stated, the performances in this movie across the board are genuinely amazing. One thing I noticed about this film is that there's very little music in it. I think I counted 2 scenes in the movie where I heard music. And I'm going to back that up to say that Andrew Garfield absolutely should be nominated for an Oscar, because he doesn't have a big score behind him to kind of like help the audience emote what he's feeling. He's literally has to do all of that with his performance. And the turmoil and the atrocities we go through with this character is absolutely devastating in moments. There's one scene in this movie that I believe will go down in history as like one of the all-timers, that we can talk a little bit more about in spoilers. And there are individual scenes in this movie that are so thought-provoking, that are conversations between 2 people, that it just blew me away. Absolutely. I was thinking about this movie. I haven't stopped thinking about this movie since I've seen it. And the way that they kind of give us both sides to this, the why the Japanese are taking the position that they are, and why the Christians or the Catholics are taking the position that they are, I thought was so interesting. And the way that kind of the Japanese people kind of emote these expressions, and the way that they go about trying to get these people to denounce their faith and get it away, I thought was just, it was fascinating for me to watch. I love this movie. I mean, I hate to do this, but I'm giving Silence a 10 out of 10. And I know I've given several movies a 10 out of 10 in 2016, guys, but I thought long and hard about things too. And I have a couple minor nitpicks, very, very minor though. And I don't feel like any of them justified me knocking it down. And we can talk about those nitpicks and spoilers, but I just couldn't not give this movie a 10 out of 10 because, first of all, another thing I wanted to mention is that the budget of this movie was like, it was like $56 million. And look at what's on screen. Look at what we got as a result of $56 million. Scorsese didn't even take a salary for this movie. And I think that that is absolutely incredible. There's great filmmaking displayed here. So, Ryan, what would you score Silence?
I'm in the exact same position as you, because I thought long and hard about this, and there are a few things that I want to get into that I was hesitant about, but I could justify on the same level. So I'm giving it a 10 out of 10, and this needs to be seen, especially for what you just said with the budget. I was just reading a report last night before I went to bed about Christopher Nolan. He is amazing. He is such an astounding director. He's making a $20 million salary, period, off of any movie he makes from now on. That's the new deal he signed. $20 million, period. Plus, he's getting a percentage cut off of the revenue of the film. So that's just kind of, that Scorsese would take nothing for this. I'm sure there's some kind of a deal somewhere in there that he's going to get some compensation out of it, but that this is such a passion project, and this is art at its finest, which gets me into one of the spoiler thoughts that I wanted to bring up with you. There were a few moments in the movie that I could tell there was a cut where it wasn't originally planned, because we've heard a lot of reports that this movie was originally like 3.5 hours, and it could have been even longer, and it's been trimmed down to get to a market where we could see it in theaters. And 2 hours and 45 minutes still is a long movie, But like I said, I can take those two moments where I knew he had more material there that he had to take out, and I can justify it because they were very well placed, and they didn't distract from the story. And that just shows what a master that Scorsese is, that he's able to take. I'm sure he bled over those cuts and he did not want to make them, but he knew it's what had to be. And I don't think there's going to be a director's cut, which is 3.5 hours, because he deliberated so hard on this. This is the cut. And I think it worked to the favor of the film. Did you notice any of those? Do you have any thoughts on the cutting or the length?
Well, just like you said, a director's cut with Scorsese is absolutely impossible. He's gone on record to say that he will never do a director's cut. The cut that goes into the theater is the final cut of the movie. And real quickly, before we get into spoilers, I just quickly want to say that this is a movie that you should go see in theaters. You should go watch it on the big screen because, like, any sort of distractions from this movie is going to take away from the overall experience. And I really think that most people who see this movie, I probably have a completely different interpretation on this film than Ryan does. And I mean, so it's one of those movies that you have to go and you have to decide for yourself what you think about it. So that being said, are you ready to move into spoilers?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I guess some of my biggest issues, or my one little nitpick about the film, is we see Rodriguez go through these crazy tortures where they essentially treat him a lot better than they're treating the Japanese Christians, right? And we have this scene where they take him to this beach and they set him down, and we see his companion, Jesuit priest, of Garupe, Father Garupe, and they treated Garupe in a completely different way, even though he was a priest, than they did Rodriguez, and I felt like that was critically underdeveloped. It also isn't explained in the book, but I don't really, I guess, understand why they tortured them both in different ways, considering the fact that they were both priests. It looked like Garupe, they hadn't been feeding. He looked extremely hungry. He wasn't wearing nice clothing like Rodriguez was. Yeah, he was. Adam Driver lost a ton of weight for this movie. And that part kind of just, it didn't make sense to me. So what do you have to say about that part? Do you have any ideas? Or
my thought originally coming out of it, and I think I keep this opinion, is that the way this, like I said originally, this movie is very deliberate in everything it does, and it's very well thought out. Obviously, he's been wanting to do this for 20 plus years. And I think that kind of rubs off, because how they ended up treating Liam Neeson's character throughout, you kind of assume that they know what they're doing and how to break these priests. But the thought that I had was they don't really know what they're doing. They're winging this. And I think it's just kind of a demonstration of that they don't really know which is the most effective way to break them. And so on one, they were treating him like crap and like all the Japanese, and they were trying to get him to break, while likewise they were treating him this way, trying to get him to break. That could have, personal characteristics to it with, you can tell, I mean, there's different levels of faith within these two men. And so I think maybe they treated them accordingly on how to best break them. It didn't stand out to me as any issue at all. I don't know. Do my thoughts even make sense on that?
No, absolutely. And that was kind of my thought too, is that from the first hour of the film, the first hour and 30 minutes, were really kind of just spending time with these two guys as they're hiding and, I guess, preaching their religion to these secret Japanese Christians. And it does tell us very specifically that they are very two different men, that Rodriguez seems to be a lot more patient, and Garupe seems to be a lot more just quick to turn to kind of a more kind of aggressive state, just even in the way that when they're giving people confessions, you see Garupe get a little bit impatient with the people just because of a language barrier. And I guess perhaps that kind of wraps up that thought, I suppose. But the other thing I wanted to ask you is, what are your thoughts on the climax of this film? The scene where God literally speaks to Andrew Garfield to tell him to step on the cross.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the parts that I was confused on coming out of the movie. Until it ended, I didn't get it, which is very unfortunate. I feel like the movie would have been a lot more powerful for me if I had understood it as it was happening. Because did they use Liam Neeson's voice as God?
No.
So I think that's what confused me, was I thought it was Liam Neeson, so I didn't know that it was God. I thought it was a voiceover like the rest of the film had, until the ending when he says, "I heard your voice in the silence," and I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Interesting. Yeah, so in that scene he says, like, trample, because I came into this world to suffer for people's sins. Right. I know what all there is to know about suffering, or I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he essentially says that it was for suffering that he came into the world. So it's supposed to be God literally speaking and breaking the silence to Andrew Garfield. I have heard complaints on this. I don't share these sentiments, but some people believe that for a movie that's called Silence, it would have been a more profound experience if God didn't literally break the silence in the movie. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because first of all, the movie wouldn't be very, it would be a very bleak experience, right, if there hadn't have been that climactic scene. And the other complaint I've heard towards it is that it kind of comes down on one side. It sides with the Christians, and I guess my rebuttal to that, well, because I mean it says that, I mean,
it's from their perspective and stuff, but
so the complaints I've heard is that people think it comes down saying that the Christians' God is the right God. You know what I'm saying? Rather than because they're Buddhists in Japan, so it's saying that they're wrong and the Christians are right. And so some people have taken certain levels of almost offense to this movie. And I don't know, because the book that he's adapting it from does the same exact thing in the story. And there are tons of biblical epics such as Ben-Hur or the Ten Commandments that are looked at as classics.
Passion of the Christ.
Passion of the Christ, that have very positive messages towards faith, I suppose. And lots of the world is primarily Christian. So I guess it kind of depends on what your stance with faith is, how you're going to respond to this movie. However, I found myself moved by it. I thought that it was a powerful experience, and I really, really like the climax. I like the way that it was handled. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't know how people can use that as a valid complaint against the film, because that's what the movie is about. The movie's about two Catholic missionaries who believe this is their God, and so it's their experience. If it was flipped around and you were following the Japanese the whole time, it would have a different message. It would be that the Japanese God is the correct God. So
and to a certain extent, I feel like people are sympathizing with people who were torturing the hell out of innocent Japanese people. And that's what's really, I mean, they have validity to their argument within the film, because the Christians are coming into the country and preaching in a place where they are not wanted, right? However, murdering innocent people as a result, in the brutal ways that they murder these people, are awful. They're horrible to watch. They're atrocious. And so I guess siding with people who are torturing innocent people, I find to be very slimy personally. But I guess some people feel like this movie put them in a weird position morally.
Which was actually one of my biggest pluses to the movie, because I served a 2-year mission for my church, but I don't pretend by any mean to say that it was anywhere near close to the experience that these guys had by any means, but I was able to relate in that way. But the thing that I appreciated the most was that I felt that it didn't really take sides. I felt that it did very well at showing that both sides were valid in what they were doing. That it was never saying these guys are right, these guys are bad. It was a very gray movie, and you could see, I mean, as gross and brutal as it was, you could see the logic that initiated the thought behind it. And likewise, you could see why the Catholics went there, but then you get these two kind of innocent forethoughts that combined into this big climactic clash of cultures, which is shocking by all means. And I loved that about the film. So to hear that some people may not have appreciated that as much is kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that this will be a movie that people, maybe upon release, it's one that is a little bit mixed, but further down the road, people will look back at it with higher regard. I hope so, because I really think on a technical level, this is an outstanding achievement, particularly, as I said, because of the budget restraints. One more quick scene I wanted to talk about, and I know we're kind of dragging on a little bit, guys, I'm sorry, but the scene with the three Japanese people, when they're put on the crosses and wait for the high tide to come in. Ryan told me, why don't you go and tell all of us what happened in your screening?
So I'm very glad that you started the review by saying that this is one that you need to experience without distractions, because like I said, I had an experience in my life that I was able to relate with these characters in a weird, different way. I feel like everyone needs to be able, in like, whether you're religious or not, this is a movie that you need to go and you need to experience and you need to think and you need to gain revelation from. This is one that you need to be in tune with the movie, and any weird little distractions really do subtract from the experience. As there is a scene, it's in the trailer, where three of the Japanese men are basically being crucified on a beach, and they're hung up on a cross, and the tide comes in and starts drowning them. And as this big monumental, this is like the end of the, this is like the, what's it called? This is the end of the first act-esque kind of a thing, where your main characters are getting the push, getting the goal, and the main reasoning behind propelling the rest of the movie. This is a monumental scene, and it's emotionally draining, and it's a tragedy. As I'm sitting there, I'll say that the theater I was in was not packed. I mean, there was probably 20 people in the whole theater, and for some reason, a guy decided to sit right next to me, which is a beef that I have aside from the fact, but he was sitting there shoveling his face full of popcorn during this scene, this pivotal scene. And as they're dying, two of them have died and one is about to die. His lungs are full of water. The guy stands up, walks across me, and like brushes against me, and he's like, sorry. He had finished his popcorn and he had to go out to get more popcorn. He had to go get his free refill in the middle of this movie. He's obviously not being impacted by the movie, and he's disrupting everyone else's experience around him in a pivotal moment. I can see whatever. If you need to eat popcorn when you're at the theater, by all means do it. But this is a movie that you need to emotionally connect with. And that's so irresponsible and not considerate to do.
Yeah, I would call that act morally reprehensible. He literally, the nerve on that guy. He left this scene, guys. I want to tell you, this scene is very hard to watch, like very hard to watch. And if he felt uncomfortable, then sure, I guess that that gives him a reason. Maybe he didn't want to tear up and start crying because you said he was sitting right next to you. So maybe because in that scene I started to kind of like tear up a little bit, especially when the one guy looks over and starts talking after the old guy had died. I was just like, oh, this is horrible. I can't believe I'm watching this. But I don't understand how any like decent hearted person could eat during that scene at all. Like you're watching people literally wave over wave come crashing over them. They're left there for like 4 days, and you're eating a large popcorn in a theater that is all warm and nice. And I don't know what to say to that one. There are some movies you should not eat during, I suppose.
Exactly. And I think why it bugged me on many levels. But to be able to sit, I don't know how anyone could do this, to sit, like you said, in a warm theater, in a cushy new seat, eating a large popcorn while you are literally watching people die for what they believe, being starved for what they believe, and then being crucified. And like you said, for 4 days, the guy is up there being pounded by a tide, drowning. He sees 2 other people die next to him, and he still holds on. And then on top of that, you see the 2 priests on a hill, and they're not allowed to intervene. They have to quietly watch this, which is wrapped up later in the movie by Liam Neeson. He's saying that these people may, depending on how you take away from the movie, these people may be dying for you, not your God. They're dying for you. And that is such an emotional, impactful, life-changing event. And to not let that soak over you, to shovel your face full of food, is just demented.
I totally agree, guys. So I feel like we should wrap this up. Do you have anything else to add at all, Ryan?
No, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to us rant for a little bit. You can follow me on Twitter at Rye_Gordon, as well as Instagram. Next week, like Spencer said, we're going to be doing our best of 2016, as well as what else are we doing?
We are going to try to be talking about XXX, the return of Xander Cage, and Split, as well as we're going to be posting a couple of Sundance videos this week, guys. So be ready for that. I think we're going to try to format it like on a day-to-day basis for each day that we're there. So we will keep you guys posted on if we're able to see Split and XXX. It's going to be a really busy week. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at SpinnyHand. Sorry, just tore my headphone out. And yeah, guys, like, comment, subscribe, share this video. Let us know in the comments what you thought of these movies. If you thought Silence was as emotionally devastating as we did, what you think of bringing food into movies such as Silence. Go and let us know anything that that you want. And also, one more thing I wanted to mention is a couple weeks ago in your most anticipated video, you said that we want some people to have the opportunity to be a guest on the show if they want to. I just wanted to say, if you have any interest in being a guest on the show, go ahead and email us, cinemaholicproductions@gmail.com. No spaces, no uppercases. And tell us why you want to help talk on our show and what movies you would be interested in talking about. Until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. We will see you this week at the Sundance Film Festival.